Hi, we're here in Washington, D.C., and I'm with the Executive Director and Co-Director of Flex Your Rights, Steve Silverman and Scott Morgan. Pleasure to have you guys on Motorhome Diaries.
How do you do?
That's great. Could you tell our viewers, someone who are not familiar with Flex Your Rights, what it is you guys do here?
Sure. Our mission is to educate people about how to assert their constitutional rights during police encounters. And what we do is we take, many people may have seen the little Know Your Rights cards that are put out by different organizations. We've essentially taken that into the 21st century by producing educational videos that show different scenarios to teach people about the right and wrong ways to assert one's constitutional rights during police encounters.
That's great. So speaking of police encounters, I'm sure as most people are familiar with, we had an incident in Jones County, and we had talked a little bit off camera. You guys are familiar with that situation. What advice do you have for us and other people in a similar scenario?
Well, the big one is the first thing that we think about. And in our upcoming video, 10 Rules for Dealing with Police, the first rule that we're putting out there is stay calm, stay cool, just, be relaxed. And, without having actually, they deleted, obviously, the video of the beginning of your encounter, so I'm not able to see sort of the demeanor, but it sounds like you guys, did stay sort of in a calm kind of place, but, beyond that, things have a tendency to escalate.
And that is rule number one. I would even make it rule number two and rule number three. It is always be calm and cool. And, with sort of the philosophy behind the information we provide is something like a sort of passive non-cooperation, kind of Gandhian, non-violent. Now, some would say, oh, pacifism, like, I personally, libertarian, I believe in the Second Amendment. I wouldn't call myself a pacifist. I believe in the right to self-defense. But when it comes to, police encounters in the United States, when you're suddenly meeting a police officer, not of your own choosing, you're dealing with an encounter where you're going face-to-face with an armed agent of the state. And in such a situation, there's never any tactical benefit in trying to escalate hostility in any way. Getting the information to find out, like, what is the reason that they pulled you over, why you up my door, how can I help you, is good, because you can get at the source of it. Oh, noise complaint. No problem, officer. I can't let you inside without a warrant, but I'm going to go turn the noise down. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you. Have a good night. And so oftentimes an encounter can simply be stopped, and that's the objective, is to end the encounter. As far as passive non-cooperation is concerned, that's where it's important to understand when the red flags go off. When officers begin investigating, they start interrogating you. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? What do you got in there? What are you guys doing?
What's a good answer to some of those things where, you know what I mean, like, you don't want to incriminate yourself maybe, but and you don't want to conclude, you want to end the situation? What's a good, calm, cool, collected, respectful answer?
Well, asserting your rights, first of all, is not incriminating if done properly. Declining to answer a question in and of itself is not incrimination, of course, and refusing a search is not considered evidence of guilt or evidence that you're hiding anything. So in and of itself, just that simple statement, officer, I don't consent to any searches, cannot be cited subsequently by the officer as evidence of wrongdoing.
Frequently, in many cases, in fact, in your case, there was a wrongful arrest. Police will use this power because the consequences to them of a wrongful arrest are generally zero, whereas all the consequences of a wrongful arrest are borne by the person who was arrested. So if police are doing something illegal, you want to assert your rights oftentimes by simply saying nothing, but continuing to ask if you're free to go. If they're trying to get into your stuff, they're trying to search you, officer, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I don't consent to any searches. And you can repeat that, of course, calmly, like you're Zen, Buddha, Gandhi, calmly. It's always the most effective way of asserting your rights, because if they then do search you against your refusal and they find something, ultimately you're in a better situation if you're able to defend the charges.
Some fellow activists like to use, and have been recommended to us, is using the phrase, am I legally required to do that? Is this something that's worth value?
I like it.
I think it can work. In fact, the guy who worked for the Ron Paul campaign, I forget the gentleman's name, I think actually employed that very effectively in that situation where he was detained. It can actually be very helpful because especially if it's being audio recorded.
Right.
That's the key. There's another important point, like recording by any available means is a good idea. And I know in your situation, those officers brutally, prevented that and even deleted the evidence. But surreptitious recording, sometimes it really makes a difference over the reality that ultimately gets defined and sort of the social contract as it is. If there's a dispute and it's a civilian's word against a police officer's, in a court of law, the officer will always be the one who gets to define reality. The only tiebreaker is video or audio recording.
Go ahead.
Oh, on that same point, I just wanted to add that sort of with regards to the concept of sort of asking the officer, am I legally required to cooperate in this way or that way? I mean, first of all, it's obviously very effective in differentiating between an order and a request. So you're helping to establish that your cooperation, despite being, cooperative, you're not doing so voluntarily. You're doing it because the officer specifically demanded it.
I would even add, asking the officer if they're legally required to do so is good, but I think it might only be effective if it is being recorded. We wouldn't want anyone to mistake that as a suggestion that you should ever defer to the law enforcement officer for legal advice.
Right.
Because that's the opposite of what you would ever want to do, because the officer is going to give you legal advice that is always going to work against your best interests. And officers are legally allowed to lie. That's really important to appreciate. Officers are legally allowed to lie to you, and this is an accepted legal tactic. Just saying, oh, well, your friend already gave you up, going down the road, just be like, well, if you don't cooperate with me, I'm not going to be able to put in a good word for you. I mean, they always are working to sort of pump up the extent of their authority in a way that tries to get you to ultimately cave by waiving your constitutional rights. And it's important to appreciate, if you consent to a search, for example, and the officer does not have probable cause but requires your consent, by consenting, the search, any contraband found, is automatically admissible in court because it's a 100% legal search. I mean, that is the loophole, Fourth Amendment loophole, that police officers are able to just drive a tractor trailer through.
It's also about letting other people manipulate your property who don't necessarily care as much about the integrity of your property as you do. I saw the video of you guys returning to, the bus after being in jail, and they had damaged stuff. The couch was all crooked, things weren't working right. And, I guarantee you, those guys may have kind of had it in for you a little bit, but even if they didn't, you'd be just as likely to be coming back and finding things not the way you left them in your car that will break stuff. And they're not going to pay for it. And, having consented and agreed to the search makes you liable for anything that happens. So, I mean, anybody who goes and consents to a search and has property damage is not likely to gain any kind of restitution for that.
So how about our viewers that are watching this? How can they find you guys, get involved with you guys, if they need to contact you, and then some of the projects that you're working on now?
Absolutely, yeah. They can visit our website anytime at www.flex, we should use Pete's arm, flexyourrights.org. You can also, all of our videos are, right now, the first video we produced was Busted: The Citizen's Guide to Surviving Police Encounters. If you put in any of those keywords into Google, it'll take you to our YouTube page, where we have the full 45-minute video. We also just have little cut-up clips as well for people who don't have 45 minutes straight. But you should watch the whole damn thing. And we're now working on producing our follow-up. I expect to have the new video, which will be called 10 Rules for Dealing with Police, available in the fall. So sign up to our email list at flexyourrights.org, and you'll be the first one to know about it when it's released.
Well, Steve,
Adam,
Scott,
thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you guys here at Motorhome Diaries, and keep up the good fight.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you.
Appreciate it.